many years ago when I was at a friend's house. I ended up watching a series called Arrow, and I thought that this was an incredible series. I loved it, and we watched a few of the series together, and then after this I pretty much forgot about it. And then a number of years ago I ended up watching it again, and during this time I started to write a few articles about Arrow, and there's so many things that stood out. I mean, visually it's great locations, and there's so many key points and important points that are touched upon throughout the series. So even though it is a superhero film, so it's not real, there are so many things in there that are very real. And I even ended up putting a chapter about Arrow in the Mother Enmeshed Men book, because I thought it touched upon something very important. And I ended up writing an article titled, I have to become someone else. I have to become something else. And if you have ever watched Arrow, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is what I said about this important line. Around 5 years ago, whilst I was visiting a friend, I ended up watching a series called Arrow. I hadn't heard of it before, but I was happy to give it a go. And after watching the first episode, there was one thing that was on my mind: to watch the next one. I thought that it was very well made, and it had everything, including a great story, interesting locations, unique characters, and it was easy on the eye. After watching the first two series, I more or less forgot all about the series and carried on with my life. However, there was something that stayed with me, and it was something that was said at the beginning of each episode of season 1. The main character says, I must become someone else. I must become something else. At the time, I wasn't completely sure why this stood out, but it was something that I often thought about as the years went by. Recently, I was drawn to Arrow again, and when I started watching the 4th season, I heard the following line at the beginning of each episode. I had to become someone else. I had to become something else. As I see it, the main character realized that he had to change himself in order to handle and overcome what was taking place in his life. Who he was wasn't cutting it. So in the same way the one outfit can be replaced by another, he replaced his old self with a new self. It was clear to him that if he had stayed the same, he wouldn't have been able to rise above what was going on. This shows that he understood that who he was wasn't set in stone, and that he could change. To do this, he couldn't hold on to his old self. He had to let go of his old self so that a new self could be born. He then looked like the same person from the outside, but on the inside, he was very different. To use an analogy, this is similar to being in a situation where one tool doesn't work, and instead of giving up, it is a case of simply finding one that does. By adapting to what is going on, a way forward is found. Now, although I'm talking about a character from a comic book series, it doesn't mean that what he went through is something that a normal human being can't go through. Nevertheless, if someone believes that who they are is who they are not going to be able to change. Consequently, if their life is too much for them to handle, they can hope that something out there changes, or that another person comes to the rescue. They themselves won't have the ability to handle what is going on and to rise above it. If this person was to see that who they are is not fixed, they could start to imagine what their life would be like if they changed their view of themselves. The next step would be to become someone who would rise above what is going on. With a new view of themselves, what they're going through might not seem as very challenging. What is going on won't have changed, but through changing their identity, it will be perceived differently. Considering this, is your view of yourself serving you, or is it holding you back? Perhaps there are parts of how you see yourself that are serving you and parts that aren't. If there are parts that aren't serving you, the good thing is that you can change these parts and gradually transform your life in the process. You will be changing your life from the inside out. So perhaps you have heard of this line or both of these lines I mentioned in the article, or perhaps you haven't. But either way, what this shows is that who you are is not fixed. And if what is going on in your life seems like too much of a challenge, then perhaps this shows that you need to change your view of yourself, and through doing this you will be able to overcome what is going on externally, to conquer this challenge and to rise above it. So what this shows is how important our view is of ourselves when it comes down to what we can achieve, what we can overcome, and what we are able to experience in life. So the main thing is that you realize that how you see yourself is not set in stone, as I've said, and that it can be changed at any moment. If you'd like to find out more about the services that I offer, please go to www.oliverjrcooper.co.uk or email me at info@oliverjrcooper.co.uk, and I'm looking forward to assisting you on your journey.